NASA. Nick Murdoch. Nick is their agency sustainability program manager at NASA. I'm sure that Nick will be saying more about his background. He has a BS degree in civil and environmental engineering from Ohio State University and a master's in engineering management from University of Central Florida. So I don't want to spend too much time, Nick, so you can explain, you can elaborate on your background and then what you do. So we usually spend about 30 to 35 minutes or so in your presentation, and after that we would like to give more time to our participants to ask questions and so on and so forth. So the stage is yours, Nick.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Let me go ahead and load up my slides and we can go ahead and get started. So give me 1 second. All right, can everyone see my slides? Perfect. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, first off, I want to say happy International Women's Day today. I read that certainly in my LinkedIn news profile. I just want to say, as a son, a brother to 2 sisters, a husband, and a father of 2 little girls, I appreciate all of my relationships that I have with the women in my life, and I look forward to certainly more progress for equity. And then to kind of get started, I'm very excited to be here today and to have an opportunity to speak to such an amazing group of students attending the University of South Florida's Patel College of Global Sustainability, as well as other distinguished guests that are joining us today. Really an honor. So as mentioned, my name is Nick Murdoch. I work for NASA as the agency's sustainability program manager. There are many perks to working for NASA, and one of them is all the very interesting and inspiring images and videos that are generated within the agency, which I'll be sharing a handful during today's presentation. This photo that's currently on the slide, it was taken back in 2010, and NASA astronaut Tracy Caldwell Dyson looks through a window in the cupola of the International Space Station at our blue planet below. It's often that you hear from astronauts returning to Earth how being in space changed their perspective of Earth and the need to preserve and protect our home planet. Okay, did that advance for you? Okay, perfect. Doesn't seem like there's a delay then. Good. When I was initially invited to provide an overview, I was asked to also talk a little bit about my journey to sustainability. Before I jump into that, I'm curious if I could get a little feedback from the audience. I have 2 questions. What motivated you to attend? And what is one thing that you'd like to walk away with today? So, I'd suggest, since this is a virtual event, let's use the chat function and would love to hear some of your feedback. Okay, now my focus here is primarily in the professional engineering and sustainability setting. However, I will also mention that I have a short career in Army aviation as a Black Hawk crew chief and licensed aircraft mechanic. Following my time in the Army, I attended, as mentioned, the Ohio State University within the College of Engineering. And during one of the introduction courses, a professor from the Civil Environmental Engineering Department spoke and discussed how so much of the world and people lack basic services like clean drinking water and proper sanitation. And if we chose to pursue a degree in civil and environmental engineering, we could be a part of that solution or part of the solution. That really resonated with me and with my time in the Army, and I was completely sold. So that was the path I took. Following my graduation from the Ohio State University in 2008, I accepted a civilian position with the U.S. Air Force at Patrick Air Force Base in Cocoa Beach, Florida. There were several things that attracted me to this position: rockets, sunshine, and my desire to work for an organization that provided a public service and to be a part of something much bigger than myself. My roles within the Air Force included compliance oversight of several environmental laws, to include the Safe Drinking Water Act and Clean Water Act, amongst others, as well as long-range project planning and contractor oversight at several downrange locations that provided telemetry service for launches. Then in 2013, a civil structural announcement was advertised for a position at NASA, and I jumped at that opportunity. I mean, who doesn't want to work for NASA? And fortunately, I was hired, and I worked within what's called the construction of facilities as a project design and construction manager for large infrastructure improvements at Kennedy Space Center, supporting what's now called the Artemis program. Now I'll step back for a moment, getting back to why did I become a civil engineer? It was to help others in the developing world. So while I was working for the Air Force as well as NASA, I've been volunteering with a nonprofit that travels to and assists organizations in the developing world with their basic needs. My part within these teams has been that of a design engineer for water treatment, sanitation, and stormwater design. So that really aligned with my values, and really so does working within the environmental field. And I was fortunate to be able to transfer back to the environmental office, this time at NASA in 2016, and I've been working in the conservation and resources field ever since. So I'm really happy to have started in the environmental field and then return to it. And I feel that's my place to be. And just recently, I stepped into my current role as the agency's sustainability program manager. I'll explain more in detail the structure of the program, the team, but essentially I report to the agency's chief sustainability officer, and I'm the boots on the ground to shepherd the entire agency's team to meet our goals. And then I'll also mention, which was also mentioned a moment ago, I have a master's degree in engineering management, and I also hold a LEED AP certification as well as professional engineer in the state of Florida. So I'll share a short video that describes NASA. Can you hear the audio? Oh, let me fix that. I forgot to, give me 1 second. Okay, let me reshare real quick. I forgot one step. Oh, I think you saw my little girls. So let me get to that slide. Okay, let me try this again.
Space is for everyone. We're all working towards a common goal. Just seeing people learn and grow and the community benefiting as a whole.
We have vendors from all around this country, and all of that's bringing in a lot of jobs and getting to work in our community.
I give back by seeing companies grow. My work means something. It provides people with the ability to feed their families.
Not everyone who works on the space program is an engineer or scientist in a white lab coat, and there's vital roles.
Everybody at NASA is very teamwork driven. Nothing that we do here is done by itself.
All successful missions come from a team that works together, that is diverse.
And we each bring a different perspective to the team to help us achieve our goals.
There's literally an expert kind of within arm's reach that you can ask any question to, and you'll probably get one of the best answers in the world.
We take a lot of ownership in what we do. You get to see a lot of that passion, you get to see a lot of that drive. People want to do their best, people want to pull together to be a part of this program that's bigger than what any of us can accomplish on our own.
NASA does the trailblazing with technology. The kind of work we do, you can't rest on your laurels and say, okay, we're there. There's no end to what we can achieve, so we have to keep pushing ourselves.
And any airplane that I get on, it's exciting to think about, oh, this airplane probably at some point passed through many of our centers. We are with you when you fly. We are coming up with safer, newer technologies that are more silent, more energy efficient.
Just to be able to work here and be able to design and touch something that will one day travel to a new planet is amazing. I mean, it's indescribable.
NASA brings hope and inspiration by leading the world to space for the progression of all people.
All right. Well, wasn't that a great video? Again, I think NASA does an awesome job in communicating to the public its value and mission. Over the course of the next several slides, I'll provide an overview of NASA. On this slide, I've captured NASA's vision, mission, and values, which are all incredibly important to help in understanding who is NASA and what matters most to us. For vision, it's exploring the secrets of the universe for the benefits of all. Such an inspiring vision to me. Mission, NASA explores the unknown in air and space, innovates for the benefit of humanity, and inspires the world through discovery. Again, just an incredible mission that NASA has. And then for values, that's captured on the right, which are safety, integrity, teamwork, excellence, and inclusion. And each of these elements really help to define what is NASA and what is the culture within NASA. To shed a little light on the organizational structure and locations, at NASA headquarters in DC, Washington, DC, which is where I work, although remotely, there exist several key offices to include the Office of the Administrator. This is where NASA's Administrator Bill Nelson, former Florida Senator, sits, and then his staff resides within the Administrator staff offices. Next, there are the Mission Directorates, Aeronautics, Exploration Systems Development, Science, Space Operations, and Space Technology. And I'll explain these further in subsequent slides. And then finally, there's the Mission Support Directorate. This is where the agency's Chief Sustainability Officer, as well as where I reside within NASA headquarters. For the Mission Directorates and Mission Support Directorates, we're spread across 10 centers and other facilities that are shown on the right of this slide. Starting with aeronautics research, this is really where NASA started. First is the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, or NACA, which was established in 1915. NASA's aeronautical innovations through the years directly benefit today's air transportation systems, the aviation industry, and the passengers and businesses who rely on those advances in flight every day. As a result, today, every U.S. commercial aircraft, every U.S. air traffic control tower uses NASA-developed technology to improve efficiency and maintain safety. The photo on this slide is an artist concept of a commercial aircraft families with a transonic truss-braced wing configuration from the Sustainable Flight Demonstrator Project. On January 18th of this year, NASA selected Boeing for a public-private partnership to develop a full-scale experimental aircraft to validate the low-drag aircraft concept for potential use on future single-aisle airliners. And with this, it's expected this type of aircraft has the potential to reduce fuel consumption by about 30% compared to the most fuel-efficient single-aisle aircraft today. So, one of the ways that NASA, within its mission directorates is supporting sustainability efforts. Exploration Systems Development Mission Directorate defines and manages systems development for programs critical to NASA's Artemis program, and planning also for NASA's Moon to Mars exploration approach in an integrated manner. With Artemis missions, NASA will land the first woman and first person of color on the moon using innovative technologies to explore more of the lunar surface than ever before. So we're planning to go back to the moon for scientific discovery, economic benefits, and inspiration for a new generation of explorers known as the Artemis generation. Also, while maintaining American leadership in exploration, we will build global alliance and explore deep space for the benefit of all. So NASA successfully launched the uncrewed Artemis mission last November, and Artemis 2, which will be crewed, is currently scheduled for May 2024. Definitely something worth coming out to see. And this photo on the slide is Artemis 1 at the pad. NASA's Science Mission Directorate and the nation's science community use space observations to conduct scientific studies of the Earth from space, to visit and return samples from other bodies in the solar system, to peer out into the galaxy and beyond, and to leverage space-based laboratories to understand how biological and physical systems work at a fundamental level. NASA's science program seeks to answer profound questions that touch us all, such as how and why are Earth's climate and the environment changing. And through this, NASA plays a very important role in helping the world to understand climate change. I combine these two directorates together since they're similar in nature, space operations and space technology. Operations manages NASA's current and future space operations and beyond low Earth orbit, including commercial launch services to the International Space Station. And technology is advancing technologies and testing new capabilities at the moon. And many of these same systems will prove critical at Mars. Now I've arrived at my organization, the Mission Support Directorate. My directorate is essentially providing what is like city or county government services at each of the NASA centers and managing all the associated land, resources, and facilities, infrastructure, as well as medical, fire, and police services. You have to think there are certainly some unique facilities and situations that we manage that are outside what typical scope would be for a city or government, or city or county government. And the photo on this slide is an elevation map at Kennedy Space Center. One of the challenges that is facing this center is climate change and sea level rise. Elevation is an important piece of information that is used by planners and land managers at that center. Now I'll transition to sustainability within the Mission Support Directorate, and I'll first share this video that was recently created. All right. Yeah, that to me that's such an amazing video, and I really appreciate the folks that work so hard to make that a reality. Um, so you might ask, what is my definition, or what is the definition of sustainability at NASA? And to me, sustainability at NASA is the responsible usage, protection, and conservation of finite and precious resources, to include natural, cultural, energy, and water, and others. And as a result, with a robust sustainability program, we ensure mission continuance, affordability, and success by preparing for a changing climate and minimizing our impact so that future generations can meet their needs. So I've described what I would call sustainability. Now you might ask, why does it matter? And I think there's at least 3 areas that matter, and there could certainly be more, but this is what I believe matter the most. Sustainability is a matter of mission continuance, affordability, and success. As our Chief Sustainability Officer quoted in the video mentioned, sustainability is now both a strategic and operational necessity. It's really something that we can't ignore. Next, our workforce and the public expect it. And the public is our support and our customers. And, I provided a few recent statistics from the Pew Research and Deloitte on this slide. Percentage of adults that believe climate should be a top priority, it's incredibly high. And also from an employer standpoint, millennials and Gen Z, it's a top priority for them. So it's something that we must do in order to remain relevant. And then lastly, the White House and Congress have placed an emphasis on it. So, if the first 2 bullets aren't enough, it's really something that we have to do and we must do because of our leadership. And also share from a personal level, and I hope you can relate. To me, it's about our children, our nieces and nephews, our grandchildren, our future workforce, and the generations to come. And, like in many areas, NASA is a leader. And within the sustainability space, I believe we should also be a leader. Now, to show how we're organized, there's several stakeholders and team members that are a part of the sustainability community. At the very top of this chart is our NASA administrator. Below him, and actually, I don't know, can you see my mouse? Okay. Yep, below him are our mission support directors, as well, or mission support and mission directors. Below that level is, and within the orange box, at the very top is our agency Chief Sustainability Officer, Joel Carney, from the last slide. The orange box contains the stakeholders that are a part of our leadership forum that is held once a quarter to discuss ongoing progress or ongoing efforts and progress within the sustainability program. This includes senior leadership membership, primarily with the environmental, facilities, logistic functions, as well as myself and my counterparts at each of the centers or the center sustainability program managers, which is shown here, and their leadership or senior leaders, which are the center sustainability officers, as I mentioned. Now within the blue box is, and I guess maybe I should have picked a different color. You know, this one maybe doesn't show quite as well. But within this box is the membership of the sustainability community of practice that I lead. I'm shown here on the kind of the top portion of it. Membership includes program managers, subject matter experts at headquarters, as well as the center sustainability program managers. And this group is at the working level to aid in vision alignment, you know, across the larger organization, coordination, communication of efforts. And for many of these functions listed on the chart, there's also a team supporting each of those functions. For instance, my function, I have several contract support to aid in the overall governance and operation of the program and senior forum, as well as the community practice and reporting. So I rely heavily on my team within the community of practice, as well as my contractor support. And, you know, just as you grow as a leader, you learn to delegate and rely on the expertise of others to help inform your decisions, as well as to manage the workload. And I'll also quickly mention, just, you know, for the sake of this audience, you know, the makeup of the team is comprised of engineers, scientists, and we're also seeing more folks joining the team that have minors or degrees in sustainability, which is exciting. And this is certainly an important and growing field. Now, as a federal agency, we're provided minimum goals from the presidential administration. The current Biden administration has established very aggressive goals for us and other agencies, which are included on this chart. And I'll go over each of these in subsequent charts. Although these goals are aggressive, and I think it's great, one of the challenges that we have as a federal agency is the change in goals that can occur from administration to administration. So I'll walk through each of these goals individually. The first, net zero emission operations and buildings. NASA in general has an older infrastructure, and some of the areas that we're focusing include consolidation of facilities with associated demolition of less efficient facilities. For facilities that we have a long-term need for, making those facilities more efficient, and for new facilities, making them as close to net zero as possible. The photo on the right is, I believe, from Ames, and it's a LEED certified facility. And these type of facilities are not only great from a resource standpoint, but also, you know, they're generally very aesthetically pleasing and very nice facilities to work in. For 100% 24/7 carbon pollution-free electricity, it's about constructing renewable energy sources and purchasing clean energy. And I'll show progress in later slides, so I won't focus too much on this, but the photo on the top is a hosted renewable energy site at Kennedy Space Center. I mentioned climate being a challenge at Kennedy Space Center. Earlier, the photo on the left is that of a dune restoration. And, you know, what you're looking at, that's really all that protects the launch infrastructure from large storm events at Kennedy Space Center. And there's only about 700 feet between the Atlantic Ocean and the launch pads, which is not a lot of space for very energy intense storms. Overall, with this goal, it's to limit NASA's risk when it comes to climate change. For net zero emission procurements, this one's a little less mature in some ways, but it's about purchasing lower carbon embodied products, bio-based, recycled, as well as more recently, we're getting into low embodied construction type materials. or low embodied carbon. Zero emission vehicles, or ZEV, it's pretty straightforward. As our vehicles age out, we're replacing them with ZEVs, and we're making pretty good progress in this space. Now, this one may be one of our trickiest goals. We're really just trying to determine how we can influence and change culture. That's a really challenging and big goal. But we have a working team set up that has diverse membership across the agency, includes a psychologist, as well as communication professionals to assist us with this one. And we've got a long way to go. And here's another one that we're trying to figure out the best approach. Environmental justice has always been a part of our NEPA, or at least for a long time, which is our National Environmental Policy Act. And we're still determining how we can further enhance what we're currently doing within this space. So as a federal agency, our reporting is much different from a corporate standpoint. We're not completing surveys to report to firms that provide ratings to investors and or the public. We report primarily through two reports. The first being OMB's scorecard, which is shown on this chart, as well as our sustainability plan report, which is provided to the White House upon their request. So the scorecard does provide a really nice snapshot on one page of overall progress relative to baseline years. And as you can see, as an agency, we're mostly green on our last scorecard, except for energy intensity and building evaluations. However, I will say overall the trends are good, which I'll share on the next several slides. Here's our trending information for energy intensity, which shows a decrease of 41% from our baseline year of 2003. So we've been doing this for a while. Next is water intensity, a decrease of 35% since 2007. This one can be challenged in areas where water costs are low and hard to justify investments. Renewable energy, as you can see how administration changes can affect goals. It'll actually be interesting to see this chart again in a few years with the current goals that we have. You can see kind of the up and down. In our investments in facility efficiency improvements, this is kind of a complicated area. Budgets are proposed by the president, and then appropriations are given by Congress, and there's many things that contribute to what ultimately gets funded, including other emergent mission needs that may have been unexpected from storms or other reasons. Fortunately, as NASA refreshes its infrastructure and we build new buildings, demolish old, we have placed a priority for our newer facilities to be more efficient. In general, the standard that we use is LEED certification of our facilities and buildings. And then since 2005, for fleet petroleum and alternative fuels, we've achieved a reduction of petroleum use of 71%, which is pretty notable.
Sorry to interrupt your presentation. Could you just conclude within 5 minutes so that we have plenty of time to ask questions?
Yep, only have a few more slides, so yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep, getting close. Yeah, and that's the fun part, so I look forward to that. I don't want to cut that short. And then for greenhouse gas emissions, we've achieved a 45% reduction in scope 1 and 2 since 2008. Yeah, so this is actually my last chart, and I'll end on a quote from one of our former NASA administrators. which is NASA is called the space agency, but in a broader sense, we could be called an environmental agency. Virtually everything we do, manned or unmanned, science or application, helps us in some practical way to improve the environment of our planet and helps us to understand the forces that affect us. So that's from our former NASA administrator, James Fletcher, to Congress, March of 1973, and still relevant to this day. So with that, I do appreciate the opportunity to share some of the great things that NASA is doing within the sustainability space, and I welcome questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Nick, for that wonderful presentation. Now it's a Q&A time, and I would request our students to come forward first, and I would ask you to turn on your camera so that we can see you as well as we can hear you. So get ready. And who would like to go first? Don't be shy.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Who is this?
It's Terry. How are you? Dangerously driving and listening at the same time, but I did have a question about
be
GHG
careful.
emissions.
Okay.
Yeah, I will. So you said there was a reduction in GHG emissions. I'm assuming that's because the shift from the fuel source that you're using. What alternative fuel source are you using for power?
Yeah, so the shift is actually a large part due to energy intensity reductions that we've made over the years. That's a bigger driver, but also just even the fuel mix so getting to fuel mix. So we purchase electricity at our centers, and some of those centers, just the utility providers have shifted their fuel mix over time as well, from dirtier sources to cleaner sources. And as an example, here at Kennedy Space Center, or at Kennedy Space Center, it's at Florida Power and Light, they've shifted their fuel mix over time from dirtier sources and even coal as part of that over to natural gas, and now even more so to getting more into renewable sources. So that contributes greatly as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking it was natural gas as well. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, great question.
Thanks, Eric. Okay. Well, if
we have a question in the chat.
Okay. Yeah. Can you read it?
Yes. What is the biggest contributor of GHG for your Scope 3 emissions, aka what is the biggest challenge for reduction of your footprint?
Yeah, so Scope 3 is certainly a big challenge, and that's not one that we've actually really focused on up to this point, but that's something that the current administration is giving a greater emphasis on. So primarily, we've just been tracking Scope 1 and 2 up to this point.
We open the floor for our faculty and community partners.
And I will say, I did ask questions earlier. Unfortunately, I didn't realize I didn't have access to the chat. So hopefully I met some of the expectations, and curious, what folks had to say earlier.
We do have another question from Katya. How do you reduce potable water in your facilities, and are you thinking of investing in reusable water or rainfall harvesting?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first, it's a kind of getting a sense of where the water goes, and inventory, metering, is a good way to start kind of a conservation program to really assess, where is water being consumed. And, for some centers, that's an easier thing than others, where, the costs of water vary greatly depending on the source. But, I'll give an example at Kennedy Space Center. There's a need for large volumes of water to be provided at the launch pads. And one of the ways that Kennedy has been able to reduce its consumption, well, and I should also add, there's environmental regulations for the quality of water as well for safe drinking water, when you have disinfectant byproducts that are produced. And so there's an adverse or kind of a competing interest. And so, which, to keep water quality up, it requires flushing. but then that adversely impacts conservation. So one of the things that Kennedy did, and other centers I think have done similar things, is to separate out industrial water to potable water in order to limit the usage. So that's one strategy. Certainly more efficient fixtures and facilities, but there's not necessarily one solution for that particular challenge.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Dr. Brad, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Majok. I think this was interesting presentation, and I really enjoyed looking at the data you have. Where you're doing great job. So you have this net zero by 2050, and recently we completed for the state of Florida the scenario net zero by 250, and also net zero electricity by 2035. And we put a number of recommendations. Now, how realistic is it to get to net zero by 2050? Plus, how much of that is from carbon offset or credits?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Incredibly challenging goal, I think, for any organization to get to. And there's not one particular solution or strategy that you might deploy. You want to certainly make your facilities as efficient as possible, but then you also can invest in renewable energy sources, that can be sited within your facilities or your boundary. So you're producing your own power. You can purchase greener sources of electricity, and that's not necessarily through credits or offsets. So those are ways to move towards the goal outside of offsets. And then you also do have the offsets as well that can potentially be utilized. So we have developed a strategic plan that gets a little more into the details on that. Not quite yet publicly available, but it is a strategic document that at least looks at these different types of strategies that can be deployed, and it also varies center by center. And what is the fuel mix or that's being utilized for the utility provider to that center as well? So where do we want to focus at any given time? And there's also costs, that are a consideration to maximize the greatest, to have the greatest impact, right? So, certainly we want to get the high cost, just as a scenario, the high cost dirty fuels off the portfolio first before we, look at these other areas.
We have one more question in the chat. They're coming in. We have two questions. Have you considered a commercial water assessment to help determine consumption at various NASA facilities?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do that I didn't really do a good job touching upon is we actually have our own internal process to conduct energy and water audits. So it's our goal to complete 25% of our facilities every single year. So over the course of a 4-year period, we would have audited 100% of our facilities, and then we restart it, every 4-year period. So that's either a combination of our internal staff, our internal contractors, or an outside source. So yeah, that's something that we'd certainly leverage.
Next question. With an increase of launches from Kennedy, both NASA and commercial, is there any investment to study the effects of the increase of emissions in the local environment and the stratosphere?
Not for emissions, because we do exclude certain activities from our accounting, and that's allowable. And DoD, and other agencies certainly have exclusions there as well. As far as potential environmental impacts, so actually kind of stepping back into my former role as the environmental management branch chief at Kennedy Space Center, we have a very robust ecological monitoring program that has been in place since the shuttle program. to assess any potential impacts, from launches at Kennedy Space Center.
There's
So
another-
that's going on since late 70s, early 80s.
If I may ask a question, so you started your talk by touching on your contribution or mission to serving humanity, that sense of serving developing nations or nations outside of the United States in terms of helping their sustainability missions or activities. So like, for example, climate related issues and things of that sort. Or so can you give us some thoughts or ideas or something that you do in that realm, particularly with the focus on sustainability?
So it's kind of two parts really for me. So the volunteering side of things is a way that I contribute, in the developing world. And those are, more at very basic levels, right? Basic type needs, basic type infrastructure. From how do I make the connection, right, between what I'm doing to that? And I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But I know folks at NASA are doing, those type of things where, they're using Earth sensing satellites to help in the developing world. I can think of one example. I think it's Server is a program at NASA that helps in that regard, and I'm sure there are others as well that help. Just even like how you're managing fields, for crop production. How are you planning out to ensure you're mitigating or minimizing risks associated with different natural type hazards as well. So there's certainly folks that do that within NASA. I just haven't figured out how to connect that dot myself.
I have a quick question here. Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Pradeep. Yeah.
All right. There seems to be one more question in the chat too, and I think Lauren, you can read that out. Nick, excellent presentation. Thank you again for presenting. And I was still, as I mentioned to you earlier, pretty impressed by the data that you collect and you report on. I understand you've been doing this for a long period of time, so you have it down to a science, especially for Scope 1 and Scope 2. I mean, some of the companies are still struggling to do that. That's not my question, though. My question relates to, I mean, we all know that NASA is also leading edge or even cutting edge when it comes to things like space stations and sustainability related initiatives when they're up in space, including all the rocket launches and stuff like that, everything from waste to energy use to everything else. I'm sure there's best practices that we could translate from what is being done in space with those kind of sustainable initiatives to what can be done on Earth itself. We will learn from that. Has anybody tried to translate that to things that we're doing on the planet?
Yeah, so I love the question, and so one of the things I've been doing kind of new in this role is looking, kind of assessing, what's working well, what's not working so well, what are the opportunities that are out there. And I see that as an opportunity as well, where I think we could have greater collaborative relationships across different components within NASA, right? So I kind of spoke to that at the beginning. How is NASA organized? We have the mission directorates, we have the mission support directorate, and sometimes there's not a lot of great communication in between. And that is an opportunity that I have kind of concluded, and certainly something that I want to further pursue as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. We have some hands up there. Shirley Boyd. Shirley, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Nick, I really want to thank you too for this really interesting presentation and the information you're bringing to us. I have a question about that interesting aircraft you showed in your presentation. Is the transonic truss braced wing? How will this new aircraft reduce greenhouse gases? Or I think, is that the purpose of it?
No,
To
it's
be more sustainable?
It's to make passenger aircraft more fuel efficient, and you know, that like many things, there's not one solution to kind of a challenge, right? There's these multiple approaches that I think need to occur. And within the aviation industry, and that's just one example as far as from the aeronautics research as to, you know, one of the areas they're helping. They're also looking into SAF, or sustainable aviation fuel, you know, helping to grow that field. And I was actually just at a conference last month, had the opportunity to meet Boeing's chief sustainability officer and hear him speak at this conference. And, you know, he kind of reiterated kind of that point where it's, you know, they're looking at hydrogen, they're looking at electrification, they're looking at SAF, they're looking at more fuel efficient aircraft. And it's through these various approaches that for the aviation industry to try to get to a net zero point. And one of the things that he mentioned was that SAF is you know, he seemed to be a proponent of SAF, but SAF's one of the easier or maybe more immediate way to kind of you know, also of sorts kind of plug and play, where you don't have to change a lot of the infrastructure at the airports to accommodate that type of fuel.
I see you have the plane that you showed us is by Boeing. I guess this one of the aircraft builders you're bringing on board to be sustainable and help you with your mission.
Yeah, so that just happened to be the company that was awarded the contract for that particular work. But you know, for federal solicitations, they're, you know, competed, you know, so that for that one, it did happen to be Boeing.
Right. Thank you.
Answer from Arul. 2 people.
Hi. I have a question about aviation fuels, and I was wondering if you also employ any hydrogen fuel technologies, and if so, what are the sustainability implications of using hydrogen fuel, and what are the regulatory issues around it?
Well, I'm kind of less experienced in that area from a hydrogen fuel standpoint. From the aviation side, I will say we use it in rockets. So we do have, NASA certainly has experience, you know, with that as a fuel source. I think there's, depending on if it's just a hydrogen fuel or a fuel cell, I think there's different considerations and constraints that one would have, you know, within for that use within an aircraft, as well as, you know, even size type constraints and pressurizations, refrigeration. So, I mean, there are certainly some challenges there that aerospace companies some are investing in and looking for solutions there. But I'm not sure for NASA how much we're in that space from an aviation standpoint. Certainly from a rocket standpoint, we use hydrogen, you know, all the time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Lauren, you said there was another person up? Hands up.
I think, yep, it's
We
me.
have Armila.
Yep. Can
Go
you
ahead.
hear me? So
Yes.
I was wondering, what's the availability of the data that you presented us earlier? Maybe I missed it during the presentation. Is it just inside the organization, or can we look at it for us as students, for example, to learn from it? Probably, you know, to come up with new things that we could probably use here on Earth.
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of what NASA does is publicly available. I'm sure there's, you know, certainly some exceptions. You know, from the sustainability program, we report out to the White House. That's available online. We put our plans out there. We put our scorecards out there. So, you know, a lot of the information that I shared today, most of the information that I shared today is publicly accessible, and I believe. Well, I have provided a copy of the slides as well, so hopefully that's able to be distributed as well.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Sure.
One request we have from our college is that we have some fantastic students in our program. that you would consider giving them opportunities like for internships and things like that. It's something that our students have to do as part of their coursework requirement, program requirement.
Yeah, so I will say what I welcome continued conversations on that topic, but in a general sense, something that is available presently, for any student that has an interest is NASA does have a robust internship program. I believe it's and I can provide the information later. I think it might be intern.nasa.gov, but it lays out a couple different programs that are currently available for students to pursue.
Okay.
We have one more.
Later. Yes, of course.
Yes. We have one more question in the chat.
Okay.
From Charles. How do you account for increasing facility energy consumption as a growing agency that is developing new facilities? I would assume overall energy consumption continues to increase as new facilities open, even with incorporating improving design standards and LEED criteria.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's kind of somewhat of a challenge to answer in some ways, but I will say our infrastructure at a lot of the centers are quite old. So a lot of the construction that made NASA into NASA occurred in the 1960s, 70s. So standards were very different then, and I guess I didn't come prepared with the stats on like a typical 1960s to present day facility, but I would venture to say it's vastly more efficient, and that's what we've been pursuing. When we build new facilities to make them close to net zero, and we're getting rid of at the same time consolidating and getting rid of those older, much less efficient facilities. And the workforce, I wouldn't say that the workforce, like the size of NASA, is growing, but we are certainly expanding partnerships, with other aerospace companies that have interests in launching at our facilities or utilizing some of our facilities as well. So that you definitely see that in the news as well.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes left in our meeting.
Yes. So we have to conclude this in 2 minutes, but I want to give the microphone over to Pradeep, because it is also this presentation is also part of his course. So, but before that, I would like to thank Nick Murdoch for this wonderful presentation, coming to participating in our sustainability speaker series. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn more about your sustainability initiatives that you undertake at NASA. So thank you so much. Let's put our hands together.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Nick. Again, I want to thank you for participating in this. It's been a great experience for our students. And we look forward to collaborating with you in the future. As I mentioned, we'd be very interested in addition to on the internship side, we would also be very interested in doing some projects with you. We're very impressed by your data collection approach. I think we could learn from some of what you do there and get the students to be skilled in all of that data collection and reporting as well, which is what they're learning in our class as well. So I'd love to continue the discussion and follow up with you. Thank you again, Nick. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, let's continue the conversation. Yeah, and thank you again.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks. You have your class, Pradeep, after this?
I do. At 6 o'clock, I have.
Oh,